Imagine you are looking at this massive, gleaming skyscraper.
Okay, setting the scene. I like it.
Right. It's this absolute marvel of modern engineering, towering into the clouds. And it basically represents decades of progress and upward mobility for all the people inside it.
Yeah, a real symbol of economic success.
Exactly. Yeah. But then you look a little closer at the foundation.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and you realize that the specific type of steel holding up this entire structure is suddenly, it's just rapidly dissolving.
Wow. When a building's foundation goes, everything above it is in immediate jeopardy, right?
Exactly.
It really doesn't matter how luxurious the penthouse is if the ground floor is just vanishing into thin air. The whole thing is coming down.
And that terrifying image, that is exactly what is happening right now.
Yeah.
Not to a physical building, obviously, but to the entire educated middle class across the Asia-Pacific region.
It's a massive shift.
It really is.
Yeah.
So welcome to today's deep dive. For you listening, our mission today is to understand this real-time, massive restructuring of national economies.
Right, because we are looking at a sudden economic disruption driven by artificial intelligence.
And on top of that, we're looking at a radical, massive-scale educational initiative that is attempting to, basically hack the very concept of a university degree to fix it.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is that we are witnessing a true macroeconomic turning point.
Definitely.
This isn't your standard tech industry story, about a cool new app or a software update making things a bit more efficient.
No, not at all.
This is about millions of people facing structural displacement and the extreme measures being deployed to keep entire nations from just sliding backward.
So to guide us through this, we're pulling from a pretty dense stack of sources today.
Very dense, yeah.
The core of it is a comprehensive March and April 2026 press release and data pack from a company called Eon AI Ventures. But we're also integrating economic research from Anthropic, some pretty dire warnings from the World Economic Forum, and direct hard data from regional labor departments across Southeast Asia.
Yeah, the local data really grounds it.
It does. So for you listening, we want to map out how this displacement is happening, and more importantly, how you intercept an economic crisis of this magnitude.
Right.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the foundation of that skyscraper we talked about, the BPO sector.
Right, business process outsourcing.
Exactly.
And, for anyone not dealing with global supply chains or international corporate structures every day, BPO is essentially the engine of the modern APAC middle class.
Yeah.
We're talking about an $80 billion industry here.
80 billion. With a B.
It is absolutely staggering. Picture the massive office towers in Manila, the dense tech corridors in Kuala Lumpur,
right,
or the bustling service centers in places like Ho Chi Minh City and Jakarta.
Yeah, millions of university graduates have built entire lives, bought homes and raised families on these specific careers.
Exactly. And the work ranges from customer service and IT support to really complex data processing and financial analysis.
So think of the BPO sector as like the 21st century equivalent of the 1950s automotive assembly line.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, because it provided reliable, upwardly mobile jobs for a massive chunk of the population. It was the ladder to the middle class.
Right.
But now, AI is the new robotic arm on that assembly line. And it is moving at digital warp speed.
And the sheer velocity of this transition is what's really catching governments off guard here.
Definitely.
If you look at Anthropic's economic index, which our sources cite heavily, they state that 70% of these BPO tasks are automatable today.
Wait, today? Not like in 10 years?
Not a projection for 2035. Today. Yeah, we are watching the structural dismantling of an entire region's economic ladder, and it's happening far faster than traditional government retraining programs can possibly handle.
Let's ground this in the reality of the numbers, because the data from the regional labor departments paints a really grim picture.
It really does.
The Philippines Department of Labor and Employment, DOLE, they estimate that over 5 million BPO workers face significant automation risk by 2028.
5 million just in one country.
Right. And then in Malaysia, you have over 4 million workers in BPO and shared services.
Yeah.
To put that in perspective, in the Philippines alone, the BPO sector accounts for about 9% of their entire GDP.
Which naturally leads to the warnings from the World Economic Forum.
Right. The WEF is definitely sounding the alarm in these documents.
Yeah, they state that just a 10 to 15% displacement in the APAC BPO sector has the potential to destabilize entire national economies.
That's terrifying.
Right. We aren't talking about a temporary recession where unemployment ticks up a few points. We're talking about structural economic failure.
Wow.
If 15% of your core middle class suddenly loses their income, I mean, consumer spending crashes, housing markets destabilize, and the tax base basically collapses.
Okay, so if you're listening to this and you're thinking logically about the global remote economy, a really obvious question comes up here.
Okay, what's that?
Let's imagine a 35-year-old operations manager in Manila.
Sure.
Let's say she manages a team of 50 people doing financial data entry for a major bank. She has a 4-year university degree, 10 years of deep professional experience, and her English is flawless.
Right, highly qualified.
Highly qualified. But suddenly, an AI system is deployed that can do her entire department's work in 3 seconds.
Yeah, which is exactly what you're saying.
Right. She gets laid off.
Yeah.
But why can't she just go onto LinkedIn or a remote job board and apply her degree and experience to another global company based in, say, London or New York?
I see where you're going with this.
I mean, the internet is everywhere, right? Why is she trapped?
That perfectly highlights what the sources identify as the central bottleneck of this whole crisis. It's called the credential trap.
Okay, wait, I need to push back on this premise.
Go for it.
If our hypothetical manager has a 4-year degree from a top-tier, incredibly rigorous school in her region, like the University of the Philippines or University of Malaya.
Right, excellent schools.
Exactly. Why does a global employer sitting in an office in London care? If she has the skills, why is there an invisible ceiling keeping her out of that global remote job market?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it comes down to a giant invisible bureaucratic wall.
Really? Just bureaucracy?
Mostly, yeah. It's about global qualification frameworks. Most APAC university credentials, despite the rigorous education and hard work behind them, are simply not formally recognized.
Recognized by who?
By employers or, more importantly, the automated HR algorithms in the EU, the UK, or the US.
Oh, wow. So she submits her resume to a London tech firm, and before a human ever even looks at her 10 years of experience,
The software just scans her university name, sees it lacks a specific Western accreditation barcode, and automatically throws her application in the digital trash.
that is brutal.
That is exactly the reality. These workers are caught in a devastating double bind.
Right.
They possess high levels of education and incredible professional competence. But because of this lack of global mobility in their paperwork, they are artificially restricted.
Restricted to competing for jobs within the exact same regional APAC market that AI is currently shrinking.
Exactly. They have high education, but zero global mobility. It's a closed-loop crisis.
Man, that's frustrating. Historically, though, if a professional in Jakarta or Manila wanted to break through that ceiling, what were their options? They had to study abroad.
Right. Yeah, that was the only reliable path. You would have to quit your job, uproot your life, move to London or Vienna.
Which is incredibly expensive.
Right. You pay exorbitant international student tuition fees and cover your living expenses in euros or pounds.
Which is obviously completely out of reach for 99% of the workforce. I mean, you can't ask 5 million displaced workers to casually move to the UK to get a second bachelor's degree.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
So the fundamental realization here is that the bottleneck isn't a lack of talent or intelligence.
Right.
The bottleneck is the credential itself. The paperwork is broken.
And if the credential bottleneck is the core problem threatening an $80 billion industry, how do you bypass it?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. How do you re-credential millions of people affordably without them having to leave their homes or quit their remaining jobs?
Yeah.
This is where ASEAN-AI Ventures enters the narrative with a massive intervention they are calling the Global Virtual Campus.
Right. And they are launching this in partnership with the University for Business and Technology, or UBT.
Looking at the data provided in the sources, UBT is a serious institution.
Oh, absolutely.
They're ranked number 6 in the world for industry and innovation in the WRI Global Rankings. They have over 15,000 active students, a 98% graduate employment rate.
Which is massive.
Yeah, and physical campuses across Europe in Kosovo, Vienna, Budapest, and Tirana.
The prestige is definitely important, but the critical detail for our displaced BPO worker is the accreditation.
Okay, break that down for us.
Through this global virtual campus, ASEAN and UBT are offering a British-accredited credential. Specifically, it holds a 4-year accreditation from the British Accreditation Council, or BAC, as of 2025.
Okay.
Furthermore, it is aligned with the European Bologna process.
Let's decode that jargon for a second for anyone who isn't familiar. The Bologna process is essentially a massive European agreement that makes sure a degree in France means the exact same thing as a degree in Germany.
Exactly.
Or, in this case, it ensures this virtual degree is recognized across the entire European higher education area.
Correct.
And the BAC accreditation is that gold standard that those London HR algorithms actually look for. It gives the resume that magical barcode.
It instantly solves the mobility problem. It opens those previously locked doors to EU, UK, and US employers.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The metrics of this offering.
Yeah, the numbers are wild.
The sources state that this globally recognized European university credential is being delivered at approximately 1% of the cost of a traditional APAC university degree.
1%. It's almost hard to believe.
1%. And it is delivered through intensive 90-day retraining pathways designed specifically so that these workers can complete the program while they remain employed in their current jobs.
It is an incredibly aggressive timeline and price point designed specifically for a crisis environment.
Okay, I have to play the skeptic here because if I'm listening to this, alarm bells are ringing.
Fair enough.
A globally recognized European degree for 1% of the cost, completed in just 90 days. That sounds suspiciously like a diploma mill.
I get why you'd say that.
I mean, it sounds like a fast-track software patch for the human brain.
Mm-hmm.
But realistically, is 90 days actually enough time to learn a completely new profession and become globally competitive?
Well, if they were taking someone with zero experience and trying to teach them corporate finance from scratch in 3 months, your skepticism would be 100% justified.
Right.
But that isn't what's happening. The answer lies in understanding who this initiative is actually built for.
Okay.
E.ON calls this their sovereign human initiative. The 90-day pathway is built for people who are already highly educated, experienced professionals.
Oh, I see.
These are people who have been running complex operations for global companies for years.
So our 35-year-old manager in Manila doesn't need to be taught what financial data compliance is.
Exactly.
She already knows how to do the work. She's been doing it for a decade.
Precisely. The 90-day intensive is not basic training. It is an exercise in rapid recredentialing and targeted upskilling.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, it's about translating the deep existing competence they already possess into a formally recognized, globally mobile framework.
Okay, but how do you actually do that?
What do you mean?
I mean, how do you assess 10 years of real-world experience and compress a 4-year university evaluation into 90 days without, lowering the standard?
This is where E.ON's technological infrastructure comes into play. The sources note that this entire initiative is backed by E.ON Reality's 25 years of experience in extended reality XR and immersive learning.
So this isn't just a new startup trying something out.
No, this isn't a startup testing a new idea at all. We are talking about a mature platform with over 136 million downloads and more than 4,400 institutional partners globally.
Okay, so they aren't just making people watch, PDF slideshows and take multiple choice quizzes.
Far from it. Immersive learning compresses time by putting the user into high-fidelity simulated environments. Instead of sitting in a lecture hall for a semester learning the theory of international financial compliance, the XR platform drops that manager into a simulated high-stakes corporate environment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the AI throws complex, real-world problems at her. It tracks her decision-making, her problem-solving speed, and her applied knowledge in real time.
That is fascinating. It's basically a highly advanced flight simulator, but for white-collar professional skills.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right. Like, if you can fly the plane in the simulator and handle all the emergency protocols the AI throws at you, you prove you have the competence. You don't need to sit through 4 years of ground school just to get the piece of paper.
Exactly. The XR platform allows for rapid, irrefutable assessment of existing skills.
Right.
It identifies exactly what the worker already knows, validates it to a European standard, and then uses the remaining time in that 90-day window to patch any specific knowledge gaps required for global mobility.
Okay, that makes sense on an individual level.
Yep.
They have a platform that works. It utilizes advanced XR assessment. It's accredited, it's cheap, and it's fast.
Yep.
But, having a brilliant solution on a website is one thing.
True.
Deploying it to 5 million people in the Philippines, plus 4 million in Malaysia, plus millions more across Vietnam and Indonesia. I mean, that requires a monumental level of systemic infrastructure.
It really does.
You don't just email a link to 9 million citizens and hope for the best.
No, deploying at that scale requires moving from a technological solution to a macroeconomic strategy.
Right.
And this is where Aeon approach is genuinely fascinating. They didn't just build the virtual campus and hope governments would adopt it. They prepared the bureaucratic groundwork across the entire APAC region in advance.
Yeah, reading this part of the source material was mind-blowing to me. They systematically went country by country to dismantle the red tape.
Exactly. Because for a foreign educational platform to operate legally and be recognized at a national level, it has to align with local qualification authorities.
The national gatekeepers.
Right. These are the strict national gatekeepers of education. The documentation shows Aeon pre-aligned their platform with CH and TESDA in the Philippines,
Wow.
MQA and HRDF in Malaysia, SkillsFuture in Singapore, and similar bodies like MOLISA in Vietnam and BAN-PT in Indonesia.
So rather than spending 5 years in committee meetings arguing about educational standards, they walked in on day one and said, here's the platform, and here is the proof that we are already 100% compliant with your national laws.
Exactly. They completely removed the bureaucratic friction that usually suffocates these kinds of massive rollouts.
That is incredibly smart.
And they also align with the broader ASEAN skills framework, meaning the credential is natively understood across the entire Southeast Asian political bloc.
Okay, let's look at the pitch they're making to the local APAC universities first.
Sure.
Because if you're the president of a prominent university in Manila or Jakarta, you want your students to succeed globally, obviously, but you might view a cheap European virtual campus as a massive competitive threat.
Right, you'd think so.
Yeah, why would you let them in?
The pitch is brilliant because it's framed as a partnership, not competition. They offer a co-credentialing model.
How does that work?
It essentially allows a local institution to offer a joint degree. A student enrolls at their local university, but graduates with a credential that is suddenly recognized in the US, EU, and UK without ever leaving their home country.
Oh, wow. So it instantly elevates the local university's global standing.
Exactly. But there is a massive financial incentive as well.
Which is?
Multinational corporations, companies like Google, Meta, HSBC, Citibank, they have massive budgets dedicated to upskilling their local professional staff.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, a local university that can suddenly offer a globally recognized BAC-accredited credential instantly becomes the preferred training partner for those corporate dollars. They capture the upskilling market.
That is a win-win.
Yeah.
And then you have the pitch to the national governments, you know, the workforce agencies staring down the barrel of millions of unemployed citizens. The sources point out that traditional government retraining programs for displaced BPO workers are incredibly inefficient. They cost somewhere between $2,000 to $8,000 per person.
Yeah, which is a huge drain on national budgets.
And at the end of that expensive, slow retraining, the worker usually gets a locally recognized certificate that still doesn't solve the global mobility problem.
It's an agonizingly poor return on investment for the state. You spend billions of taxpayer dollars, and the workforce is still trapped behind the credential wall.
Whereas the global virtual campus is infinitely cheaper.
Infinitely.
But beyond the price, it provides the government with AI-verified skill assessments. It gives the national agencies trackable, transparent data on every single participant from day one.
Exactly.
But the real macroeconomic kicker, and this is the part that genuinely changes how you view global economics, is the remittance multiplier.
The macroeconomic impact of upgrading a national workforce's credentials, it's huge.
Think about what this means for you, the listener. If you were running a country like the Philippines or Vietnam, your economy relies heavily on exporting brainpower.
Right.
Globally, credentialed workers earn significantly higher wages on the international market. For the Philippines, international remittances, money sent back home by citizens working for foreign companies, that makes up roughly 8% of their entire GDP. For Vietnam, it's about 6%.
It is the lifeblood of their national economies.
So by upgrading the credentials of your workforce from a regional standard to a global standard, you aren't just helping an individual get a better job.
No, not at all.
You are directly, instantly upgrading your country's national income through those higher remittances. It is a direct, measurable injection into the GDP.
Which introduces a really intense geopolitical dynamic here.
Definitely.
This raises an important question. Aeon's chairman, Dan Ledgerskar, is quoted in the release, and he is essentially issuing a challenge to the governments of the region. He's saying the first Asian nation to deploy this infrastructure at scale doesn't just save their BPO sector from collapse. They become the undisputed regional leader in a post-BPO AI-resistant workforce strategy.
Wow. It sets off an arms race.
An arms race for economic survival, exactly. Think about the stakes.
Right.
If Malaysia moves first and adopts this framework, their workforce suddenly becomes the premier, globally accredited talent pool for international capital. Every major company will look to hire there first.
And if the Philippines moves first, they secure their vital 8% GDP lifeline and rapidly expand it.
Exactly. The government that hesitates, the one that clings to the old regional credential models, is going to watch their middle class slide backward into poverty as those 70% of automatable tasks simply evaporate into the cloud.
It's an incredible narrative arc to step back and look at. I mean, we started with this looming $80 billion threat of AI wiping out the literal foundation of the APAC middle class.
Right.
We dug into the credential trap, that invisible bureaucratic wall, keeping highly educated, highly competent workers locked in a shrinking regional market.
Yeah.
And we've seen this radical 90-day, globally accredited XR solution acting as a high-speed lifeline. It is essentially a way to hotwire the rigid university system to prevent a total economic catastrophe.
It is a massive structural hack. And taking a step back, it highlights a fundamental shift in how we all need to think about human labor in the age of artificial intelligence.
Absolutely.
You know, there is a detail buried in the corporate boilerplate at the very end of Aeon's press release that I think offers the most profound insight in the entire stack of documents.
Oh, what did they bury in the fine print?
They note that their specific AI platform is built for high-stakes environments where precision matters. They explicitly state that generic AI delivers 80% quality, but high-stakes operations require 100% precision.
Okay, let's think about the implications of that for a second.
Yeah, if you look at standard BPO work, the repetitive data entry, the basic customer service scripts, the routine operational tasks, that is the 80% quality work.
Right, it's predictable.
And that is exactly what AI is rapidly, effortlessly eating up.
So true.
So the future of human employment, whether you are in Manila, London, or New York, it doesn't lie in competing with the machine on volume or routine tasks. Our economic survival entirely depends on our ability to master that final, vital 20% margin of high-stakes precision.
The nuanced problem solving.
Exactly.
The complex judgment calls. The 20% that the machine can't quite grasp without, hallucinating or breaking protocol.
Precisely. The systems we are building force us to ask a deeply uncomfortable question. Are we ready for a world where good enough is entirely automated and humans are only called upon for absolute perfection?
Man, that is a staggering thought to leave on. Because if that skyscraper is going to stay standing, we clearly can't just keep pouring the same old foundation. The old rules of volume and routine are gone.
They really are.
We have to learn how to build with something entirely new. We have to become the architects of that final 20%. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.